Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 16 of The Longing. We're still in Zarathustra, and we're probably going to be in it for a long time, considering that we're on page 46 out of 154. And I guess we might end up taking breaks, but I don't really feel like taking a break right now, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll break this up with some more interviews and things of that nature, and then once we finish, well, I'm sure some of the pathways that have been blocked to us in the caves earlier will be open to us. But for now, if you're not enjoying this, just skip ahead to when I start doing something else. And without further ado, I'm going to start on Roman numeral 3, Backworldsman. Once on a time, Zarathustra also cast his fancy beyond man, like all backworldsmen. The work of a suffering and tortured god did the world then seem to me. The dream and diction of a god did the world then seem to me, colored vapors before the eyes of a divinely dissatisfied one. Good and evil, and joy and woe, and I and thou, colored vapors did they seem to me before creative eyes. The Creator wished to look away from himself. Thereupon he created the world. Intoxicating joy is it for the sufferer to look away from his suffering, and forget himself. Intoxicating joy and self-forgetting did the world once seem to me. This world, the eternally imperfect, an eternal contradiction's image, and an imperfect image, an intoxicating joy to its imperfect creator. Thus did the world once seem to me. Thus, once on a time, did I also cast my fancy beyond man, like all backworldsmen. Beyond man, forsooth? And ye brethren, that God whom I created was human work and human madness, like all the gods. A man was he, and only a poor fragment of a man and ego. Out of mine own ashes and glow it came unto me, that phantom. And verily, it came not unto me from the beyond. What happened, my brethren? I surpassed myself, the suffering one. I carried mine own ashes to the mountain, a brighter flame I contrived for myself. And lo, thereupon the phantom withdrew from me. To me, the convalescent, would it now be suffering and torment to believe in such phantoms. Suffering would it now be to me and humiliation. Thus speak I to backworldsmen. It's hard to read this because you just jammed three words together, backworldsmen. Suffering was it, and impotence, that created all backworlds, and the short madness of happiness, which only the greater sufferer experienceth. Weariness, which seeketh to get to the ultimate with one leap, with a death leap, a poor, ignorant weariness, unwilling even to will any longer, that created all gods and backworlds. Believe me, my brethren, it was the body which despaired of the body. It groped with the fingers of the infatuated spirit at the ultimate walls. Believe me, my brethren, it was the body which despaired of the earth. It heard the bowels of existence speaking unto it, and then it sought to get through the ultimate walls with its head, and not with its head only, into the other world. But that other world is well concealed from man, that dehumanized, inhuman world, which is a celestial knot. The bowels of existence do not speak unto man, except as man. Verily, it is difficult to prove all being, and hard to make it speak. Tell me, ye brethren, is not the strangest of all things best proved? Yea, this ego, with its contradiction and perplexity, speaketh most uprightly of its being. This creating, willing, evaluating ego, which is the measure and value of things. And this most upright existence, the ego, it speaketh of the body, and still implieth the body, even when it museth and raveth and fluttereth with broken wings. Always more uprightly learneth it to speak the ego, and the more it learneth, the more doth it find titles and honors for the body and the earth. A new pride taught me mine ego, and that teach I unto men, no longer to trust one's head into the sand of celestial things, but to carry it freely, a terrestrial head, which giveth meaning to the earth. A new will teach I unto men, to choose that path which man hath followed blindly, and to approve of it, and no longer to slink aside from it, like the sick and perishing. The sick and perishing. It was they who despised the body and the earth, and invented the heavenly world, and the redeeming blood drops. But even those sweet and sad poisons they borrowed from the body and the earth. From their misery they sought escape, and the stars were too remote for them. Then they sighed. Oh, that there were heavenly paths by which to steal into another existence and into happiness. Then they contrived for themselves their bypaths and bloody droughts. Beyond the sphere of their body and this earth, they now fancied themselves transported, these ungrateful ones. But to what did they owe the convulsion and rapture of their transport? To their body and this earth. Gentle is Zarathustra to the sickly. Verily, he is not indignant at their modes of consolation and ingratitude. May they become convalescents and overcomers, and create higher bodies for themselves. Neither is Zarathustra indignant at a convalescent who looketh tenderly on his delusions, and at midnight stealeth round the grave of his God, but sickness and a sick frame remain even in his tears. Many sickly ones have there always been among those who muse, and languish for God. Violently they hate the discerning ones, and the latest of virtues, which is uprightness. Backwards they always gaze toward the dark ages. Then indeed were delusion and faith something different. Raving of the reason was likeness to God, and doubt was sin. Too well do I know these godlike ones. They insist on being believed in, and that doubt is sin. Too well also do I know what they themselves most believe in. Verily, not in backworlds and redeeming blood drops, but in the body do they also believe most, and their own body is for them the thing in itself. But it is a sickly thing to them, and gladly would they get out of their skin. Therefore hearken they to the preachers of death, and themselves preach backworlds. Hearken rather, my brethren, to the voice of the healthy body. It is a more upright and pure voice. More uprightly and purely speaketh the healthy body, perfect and square built, and it speaketh of the meaning of the earth. Thus spake Zarathustra. I was interested in it seems like he's trying to say, like, oh, I don't necessarily hate people who believe in God, and on some level you can at least pity them. But it's hard to get his exact meaning when it's so weird like this, as it has been through the entirety of this reading. 4. The despisers of the body. To the despisers of the body will I speak my word. I wish them neither to learn afresh nor teach anew, but only to bid farewell to their own bodies, and thus be dumb. Body am I and soul, so saith the child, and why should one not speak like children? But the awakened one, the knowing one, saith, Body am I entirely, and nothing more, and soul is only the name of something in the body. Well, we can tell Naish is not a dualist. The body is a big sagacity. That's another new word. A plurality with one sense, a war and a peace, a flock and a shepherd. An instrument of thy body is also thy sagacity, my brother, which thou callest spirit, a little instrument and plaything of the big sagacity. I feel like I should learn I'm gonna look up sagacity. Okay, so I don't think I really learned anything. It didn't seem to make any sense to me, what I found. The body is a big sagacity, a plurality of one sense, a war and a peace, a flock and a shepherd. An instrument of thy body is also thy little sagacity, my brother, which thou callest spirit, a little instrument and plaything of the big sagacity. Ego, sayest thou, and art proud of that word. But the greater thing, in which thou art unwilling to believe, is thy body with its big sagacity. It saith not ego, but doeth it. What the sense feeleth, what the spirit discerneth, hath never its end in itself. But sense and spirit would fain persuade thee that they are the end of all things, so vain are they. Instruments and playthings are sense and spirit. Behind them there is still the self. It's idle reading, Behind them there is still the sense of self. The self seeketh with the eyes of the senses. It hearkeneth also with the ears of the spirit. Ever hearkeneth the self, and seeketh. It compareth, mastereth, conquereth, and destroyeth. It ruleth, and is also the ego's ruler. Behind thy thoughts and feelings, my brother, there is a mighty lord, an unknown sage. It is called self. It dwelleth in thy body. It is thy body. There is more sagacity in thy body than in thy best wisdom. And who then knoweth why thy body requireth just thy best wisdom? Thyself laugheth at thine ego. and its proud prancings. What are these prancings and flights of thought unto me? It saith to itself. A byway to my purpose. I am the leading string of the ego and the prompter of its notions. The self saith unto the ego, feel pain, and thereupon it suffereth, and think of how it may put an end to thereto, and for that very purpose it is meant to think. The self saith unto the ego, feel pleasure, thereupon it rejoiceth, and think of how it may oftentimes rejoice, and for that very purpose it is meant to think. To the despisers of the body will I speak a word. That they despise is caused by their esteem. What is it that created esteeming and despising and worth and will? The creating self created for itself esteeming and despising. It created for itself joy and woe. The creating body created for itself spirit as a hand to its will. Even in your folly and despairing, each serve yourself. Ye despisers of the body, I tell you, your very self wanteth to die and turneth away from life. No longer can your self do that which it desireth most, great beyond itself. That is what it desireth most. That is all its fervor. But it is now too late to do so. So yourself wisheth to succumb, ye despisers of the body. To succumb, so wisheth yourself, and therefore have ye become despisers of the body, for ye can no longer create beyond yourselves, and therefore are ye now angry with life and the earth. An unconscious envy is in the sidelong look of your contempt. I go not your way, ye despisers of the body. Ye are no bridges for me to the Superman. Thus spake Zarathustra. 5. Joys and passions. My brother, when thou hast a virtue, and it is thine own virtue, thou hast it in common with no one. To be sure, thou wouldst call it by name and caress it. Thou wouldst pull its ears and amuse thyself with it. And lo, then hast thou its name in common with the people, and hast become one of the people in the herd with thy virtue. Better for thee to say, ineffable is it, and nameless, that which is pain and sweetness to my soul, and also the hunger of my bowels. Let thy virtue be too high for the familiarity of names, and if thou must speak of it, be not ashamed to stammer about it. Thus speak and stammer. That is my good, that do I love. Thus doth it please me entirely. Thus only do I desire the good. Not as the law of a god do I desire it. Not as a human law or a human need do I desire it. It is not to be a guidepost for me to the super-earths and paradises. An earthly virtue is it which I love. Little prudence is therein, and the least everyday wisdom. But that bird built its nest beside me. Therefore I love and cherish it. Now sitteth it beside me on its golden eggs. Thus shouldst thou stammer and praise thy virtue. Once hast thou passions and callest them evil, but now hast thou only thy virtues. They grow out of thy passions. Thou implantest thy highest aim into the heart of those passions. Then became they thy virtues and joys. And though thou went of the race of the hot-tempered, or of the voluptuous, or of the fanatical, or the vindictive, all thy passions in the end became virtues, and all thy devils angels. Once hast thou wild dogs in thy cellar, but they changed at last into birds and charming songstresses. Out of thy poisons brewest thou balsam for thyself. Thy cow, affliction, milkest thou. Now drinketh thou sweet milk of her udder. And nothing evil groweth in thee any longer, unless it be the evil that groweth out of the conflict of thy virtues. My brother, if thou be fortunate, then wilt thou have one virtue and no more. Thus goest thou easier over the bridge. Illustrious is it to have many virtues, but a hard lot, and many one hath gone into the wilderness and killed himself, because he was wary of being the battle and battlefield of virtues. My brother, are war and battle evil? Necessary, however, is the evil. Necessary are the envy and the distrust and the backbiting among the virtues. Lo, how each of thy virtues is covetous of the highest place. It wanteth thy whole spirit to be its herald. It wanteth thy whole power in wrath, hatred, and love. Jealous is every virtue of the others, and a dreadful thing is jealousy. Even virtues may succumb by jealousy. He whom the flame of jealousy encompasseth, turneth at last, like the scorpion, the poison sting against himself. Ah, my brother, hast thou never seen a virtue backbite and stab itself? Man is something that hath to be surpassed, and therefore shalt thou love thy virtues, for thou wilt succumb by them. Thus spoke Zarathustra. I think we're going to leave it there. I, like all the other times, don't know what to say. Don't have anything good for you. If you were expecting something good to say, I don't have it. Maybe I will some other time. Bye.